Sometimes adulting is hard. Am I wrong for wanting a divorce after 21 years of marriage? I, a 45-year-old man, have been married to my wife Lauren, who is 46, for 21 years. We have 2 kids, both in college and out of the house now. Our marriage wasn't always like this, but for the past 10 years we've been sleeping in separate bedrooms. At first it was because I snored, which, okay, I get it. But after I started using a CPAP machine to manage my sleep apnea, it became about the noise that made. Then it was about me moving around too much in my sleep. There was always something new to explain why she didn't want to share a bed anymore. Eventually it became about her needing a sanctuary, her own space to rest, recharge, and relax. In the early days of the separate bedrooms, I still visited her room on occasion. We still had some intimacy, though it became less frequent over time. Now it's been 4 years since we last had sex, and to be honest, I don't think either of us misses it. Our relationship has morphed into something more like roommates who barely see each other. We both have our hobbies, but they're completely separate. She's into gardening and yoga, and I'm more into hiking, photography, and working on cars. We used to enjoy hiking and camping together, but those activities have fallen by the wayside too. We no longer have any shared friends either. I've got my group of buddies and she has hers. I'm ready to file for divorce. I've thought about it for the past few years, and now that the kids are out of the house, it feels like the right time. I've even imagined what life might look like after the divorce. If we lived in different houses, I don't think it would be all that different from how it is now. We're already living completely separate lives. The thing is, I don't hold any ill will toward her. I don't want to hurt her or blow up her life, but I can't stay in a marriage where I feel so disconnected and lonely. It's draining. I need more than just being roommates, more than being in a loveless, sexless marriage. But I know this will devastate our kids. Even though they're adults now, I know they'll struggle with this. And my wife, well, I'm not sure how she'll react. So Reddit, would I be the asshole for making this official and asking for a divorce even though I don't hate her or wish her ill? I just need more than this, but I'm scared of blowing up everyone else's life in the process. I wasn't prepared for the fallout, at all. When I posted my original story, I had no idea just how messy and emotional this would get. I took your advice and I sat Lauren down for a serious conversation. I told her how I've been feeling, about the loneliness, the disconnection, how I felt like we were just cohabiting instead of really being partners. I told her that I had been thinking about divorce for a while now and that I thought it might be best for both of us to move on with our lives. She didn't take it well, at all. In fact, she seemed blindsided, which, I'll admit, surprised me. I thought she would have seen this coming. I mean, we've barely spoken in the past few years unless it was about the kids or bills. We sleep in different rooms, we never spend time together. How could she not have felt the distance between us? She cried and I felt terrible. She kept asking me if there was someone else, if I'd fallen in love with someone else, but there's no one else. I just want more out of life. More connection, more intimacy. I explained that to her, but it didn't seem to matter. She said she had no idea I was feeling this way and that she thought we were just in a comfortable phase of our marriage. Comfortable. I don't know what marriage she was living in, but it sure didn't feel comfortable to me. After our conversation, we told the kids together. That was a disaster. I thought they'd understand. They're adults after all, and they've been out of the house for a while. I thought they'd see that this was something I needed to do for myself. But no, they flipped out. My daughter Grace screamed at me, called me selfish, and said I was abandoning the family. My son, Jack, refused to even look at me and walked out. They said they never saw this coming, that we had always seemed fine. Grace even told me that if I ever started dating again, she'd cut me out of her life completely. Jack said something similar, but in fewer words. I tried to explain to them that this wasn't about them, and it wasn't about hating their mother. I told them that I still care about her, but I can't live like this anymore. I can't keep pretending that everything is okay when it's not. But all they could see was that I was tearing the family apart. The whole situation has left me questioning everything. Was I wrong to want more? Was I selfish for wanting to be happy and fulfilled? Should I have just stayed in the marriage for the sake of the kids and not rocked the boat? I know I'm not in love with Lauren anymore. Not in the way I used to be. But this backlash from the kids is killing me. I never wanted to hurt them, and now I feel like I'm the villain in their eyes. I don't know if they'll ever forgive me. Grace's words about cutting me out if I ever dated again keep playing in my head. Jack has barely spoken to me since we told them. I'm not even sure they'll want to visit me after the divorce is finalized. It's like I've lost my family, even though all I wanted was to find myself again. So yeah, that's where I am. I feel terrible, but I also know I can't go back to the way things were. I still don't hate Lauren and I don't want to hurt her. But I can't keep living like this. I just hope one day the kids will understand why I had to do this. It's been a few weeks since the initial bombshell, and things have settled, though not in the way I expected. Lauren has agreed to the divorce, but she's still reeling. She keeps bringing up memories from our early days, almost like she's trying to piece together where things went wrong. It's hard to hear because I remember those times too, and part of me wonders if we could have done something differently. But I know deep down that this is the right decision for both of us. She just can't see it yet. As for the kids, it's been radio silence. Grace sent me one text, essentially reiterating that she won't forgive me if I move on with someone else. Jack hasn't said anything at all. I've tried reaching out, but I'm getting the cold shoulder. It's like they think the divorce was some personal attack on them, even though I've made it clear it wasn't about them at all. It's been tough, but I'm trying to give them space to process everything. I just hope they'll come around eventually. I've been seeing a therapist to help me navigate all of this. She's been helping me work through the guilt I feel. Guilt for leaving Lauren, guilt for hurting the kids, and guilt for wanting something more for myself. It's a lot to unpack, but I'm starting to feel more confident in my decision. I need to find happiness, and I know staying in a loveless marriage wasn't going to give me that. Lauren has started seeing a therapist too, which I think is a good thing. I don't know what she's going through in her sessions, but I hope she's finding some clarity too. Maybe one day we'll be able to sit down and have a real conversation about everything that's happened without all the hurt and emotion clouding things. I hope she finds happiness too, whether that's with someone else or just in her own life. In the meantime, I'm trying to rebuild. I've started going out with my friends more, picking up some old hobbies and just trying to figure out what life looks like as a single guy after 21 years of marriage. It's weird and scary, but it also feels like a fresh start.
I don't even know where to start. I'm still in shock. I read Josh's posts and his updates, and I can't believe this is how he feels. I never saw any of this coming. Not the divorce, not the loneliness he claims he's been feeling, and certainly not the idea that he's been unhappy for so long. It feels like my entire world has been ripped out from under me, and I'm left standing here, trying to make sense of it all. But if Josh can post his side of the story, then I guess I have the right to tell mine. We've been married for 21 years, that's more than half of my life. In the beginning, it was great. We were young, in love, and everything felt like an adventure. But things change, people change, life gets busy. There were times when I was stressed, when work and raising kids became all-consuming, and I know I wasn't always as present as I could have been. But Josh? He wasn't perfect either. He was always working late, spending weekends tinkering on his car or off hiking without me. It's not like he was ever making time for us either. He just drifted away too. Yes, we started sleeping in separate bedrooms. At first, it was because he snored. You can't imagine how frustrating it is to be jolted awake every night by loud, incessant snoring. I couldn't sleep, and when I don't sleep, I can't function. So we tried the CPAP machine, and while it helped with the snoring, it was still noisy, and I was still waking up throughout the night. I had to prioritize my health, so I moved into the guest room. I thought it would be temporary, but as time went on, I started to enjoy having my own space. I'll admit, creating my sanctuary was important to me. I needed a place where I could unwind, where I didn't have to worry about anyone else. It was nothing personal against Josh. It was just something I needed for myself. It doesn't mean I stopped loving him or didn't want to be with him. It's just, I needed a break from everything sometimes. We were always surrounded by kids, family, friends, responsibilities. Having my own space was my way of recharging. I guess I didn't realize how much that separate space was impacting him. I thought it was normal for long-term couples to develop their own routines, their own interests. I thought we had entered a phase in our marriage where we didn't need to be glued to each other's sides all the time. And I thought Josh was okay with that, because he never said anything. He never brought it up, never told me how lonely he felt, never expressed how disconnected he was. He just silently gave up, I guess. And then there's the intimacy part. Yes, it's true that we haven't had sex in a few years, but I thought that was something we had both accepted. We've been together for so long, and honestly, after 2 kids and all the pressures of life, sex just wasn't a priority for me anymore. I didn't feel like he was interested either. I mean, he never made any advances or initiated anything, and after a while, I just assumed we were content with the way things were. I thought we were both okay with focusing on other aspects of our relationship, but apparently I was wrong. When Josh told me he wanted a divorce, I was blindsided, completely blindsided. I had no idea he was feeling this way, and it hurt more than I can put into words. I thought we were in a stable place, even if it wasn't the passionate, romantic relationship we once had. I thought we were building a life together, even if that life looked different than it did in our 20s and 30s. But to hear him say he's been so unhappy and lonely, I felt like I had failed him. Failed us. What really gets me, though, is that he never said anything. He never gave me a chance to fix things, to work on our marriage, to try to rekindle what we lost. Instead, he just decided it was over and dropped the bomb on me without any warning. I would have tried. I wanted to try. If he had told me he was unhappy, we could have gone to counseling or made more of an effort to spend time together. But he never gave me that opportunity. He just made the decision and expected me to be okay with it. And the kids? God, the kids! They're devastated. Grace is furious, Jack is heartbroken, and I don't blame them for feeling that way. How could they not be upset? We've always been a close family, and now their father is the one tearing it apart. I know he says it's not about them, but how can it not be? They see it as a betrayal, and in some ways I do too. I feel like Josh is giving up on us, on everything we've built together, on the family we created. How could I not feel betrayed by that? The worst part is that he seems so convinced that this is what he needs to be happy. He keeps talking about wanting more out of life, more connection, more intimacy, more something. But why can't he see that we could have found that together? Why does he think the only way to be happy is to leave me? I know we've drifted apart, but we could have worked through it. We could have rediscovered each other, rebuilt our connection. But now, I don't know if there's any going back. I'm seeing a therapist now, and I'm trying to process everything. It's hard, though. I'm trying to make sense of a marriage that I thought was solid, and I'm trying to figure out how to move forward when the life I've known for over 20 years is crumbling around me. I'm angry, I'm hurt, and I'm scared of what the future holds. But part of me still hopes that maybe, just maybe, Josh will realize that leaving isn't the answer. Maybe he'll see that we still have something worth fighting for. But if he doesn't, well, I guess I'll have to learn to move on. I never thought I'd be in this position, but here I am, trying to pick up the pieces of a life I thought would last forever. It's been a couple of weeks since Josh and I had the conversation, and I still feel like I'm walking around in a fog. He's been staying at a friend's house while we figure out the details of the divorce, and the house feels emptier than ever. The quiet is unbearable, and I keep waiting for him to walk through the door, like this is all some terrible dream I'm going to wake up from. The kids have been a mix of emotions. Grace calls me every day, checking in and offering to come stay with me. She's still livid at her dad, and I'm trying not to fuel that anger, even though part of me feels just as hurt and blindsided as she does. Jack, on the other hand, has been more distant. He's always been the quieter one, but I can tell he's struggling too. He doesn't say much when we talk, but the sadness in his voice is enough to break my heart all over again. I've tried to reach out to Josh a few times, but our conversations are stilted, awkward. He's determined that this is what he needs, and every time we talk, it feels like he's already moved on in his mind. I've been trying to focus on therapy, to work through my own feelings of betrayal and loss. My therapist says I need to start thinking about what I want for myself, but it's hard when all I can think about is the life we had, and the life that's slipping away. I keep replaying everything in my head, wondering if there was a moment when I could have done something differently. Could I have been more present? Should I have noticed sooner that he was unhappy? Maybe I took our marriage for granted, assuming we were in a stable, comfortable place. I thought we were just settling into a new phase of life, but maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was too wrapped up in my own routine to see that he was drifting away. But what hurts the most is that he never gave me a chance. He never said, "Lauren, I'm lonely. I need more from you." If he had, I would have tried. I wanted to try. I love him. I thought we were still partners, even if we had our separate lives and routines. I thought we were building something lasting, but I guess I was wrong.
It's been a few months since my last update, and so much has changed in ways I never could have anticipated. Life has a funny way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them, And sometimes those unexpected moments lead you back to places you thought you'd left behind forever. A few weeks ago I got a call from Grace. I could tell immediately that something was wrong. Her voice was shaky, barely above a whisper. "Dad," she said, "Grandpa passed away last night." My heart sank. Lauren's father, Thomas, was a good man. He'd always treated me like a son, even after the divorce. We weren't in regular contact, but I had fond memories of him. Fishing trips, barbecues, the way he laughed with his whole body. Without a second thought, I told Grace I'd be there for the funeral. The funeral was being held 2 states away, in the small town where Lauren grew up. I hadn't been back there in years, not since before everything fell apart between us. As I drove the familiar roads, memories flooded back, both good and bad. Part of me was nervous about seeing Lauren again, especially under such somber circumstances, but I knew I needed to be there. When I arrived at Lauren's mother's house, it was filled with family and friends paying their respects. I stepped inside, scanning the room for Lauren. It felt strange being there, like stepping into a past life. Then I saw her, standing near the fireplace, her eyes red and puffy from crying. She looked smaller somehow, diminished by grief. Before I could make my way over to her, someone else pulled her into a hug. I waited patiently, offering polite nods to a few relatives who acknowledged me with surprised glances. When Lauren finally stepped away from the crowd, our eyes met across the room. For a moment, time seemed to stop. She looked at me with a mix of shock, relief, and overwhelming sadness. "Josh," she whispered, her voice barely audible. I started walking toward her and she began to move as well, but her steps were unsteady. Before I knew it, her knees buckled. I closed the distance between us in a heartbeat and caught her just as she was about to fall. She collapsed into my arms, sobbing uncontrollably. "I'm so sorry," I murmured, holding her tightly. "I'm so sorry, Lauren." She clung to me as if I were a lifeline, her fingers gripping the fabric of my jacket. Without thinking, I scooped her up into my arms. She was light, almost weightless, and it felt natural, as if this was exactly where we were both supposed to be. I carried her down the hall to her old bedroom, the one we used to share when we visited her parents. The room was just as I remembered it, soft pastel walls, a quilt her grandmother had made draped over the bed, and in the corner, the old rocking chair where I'd spent countless nights rocking our babies to sleep. I sat down in the chair with her still in my arms. She buried her face in my shoulder, her tears soaking through my shirt. I began to rock gently, the way I used to when the kids were little. I rubbed soothing circles on her back, murmuring words of comfort. "I'm here," I whispered. "I'm here." Minutes passed, or maybe hours, I couldn't tell. Eventually her sobs subsided into soft hiccups. She pulled back slightly to look at me, her eyes searching mine. "Thank you for coming," she said softly. "I didn't think you would." "Of course I came," I replied. "He was family, your family." She nodded, a fresh tear rolling down her cheek. I wiped it away with my thumb, and for the first time in a long while we shared a moment of genuine connection. Just then the door creaked open slightly. Jack poked his head in, his eyes widening when he saw us. I glanced at him, lifting a hand to signal that everything was okay. He seemed taken aback, staring at us as if he couldn't quite process what he was seeing. "Mom? Dad?" he stammered. I gave him a small smile. "We're all right, Jack, just need a few minutes." He hesitated for a moment before nodding slowly. "Okay, I'll let everyone know you need some time." As he pulled his head back out, I heard him whisper to someone in the hallway, "Don't go in there." "Why not?" Grace's voice responded quietly. "They're together. Like, together. There was a pause, and then I heard Grace say, "Really?" Her tone was a mix of surprise and something else, hope maybe. Lauren and I stayed in that room for a while longer, talking in hushed tones about her father, sharing memories and stories. It felt good to reminisce, to remember the happy times. For the first time in years we were opening up to each other, and it felt right. After the funeral, I lingered in town for a couple of days to help with anything the family needed. Lauren and I continued to talk, not just about her dad, but about us, the kids, life in general. It was like peeling back layers that had been building up for years. Before I left to head back home, Lauren approached me with a tentative smile. Would you be interested in going on a hike with me next month? She asked. I want to spread some of Dad's ashes at the top of Hawks Peak. It was his favorite spot. Hawks Peak was a mountain near her old home, a place we used to hike together when we were younger. I'd like that, I said sincerely. A month later, we met at the base of Hawks Peak. The air was crisp, the leaves just beginning to turn shades of orange and gold. Lauren was waiting for me, dressed in hiking boots and a familiar worn backpack slung over her shoulder. Ready? She asked, her eyes meeting mine with a softness I hadn't seen in years. Ready, I replied. We started up the trail, the path winding through dense forest and opening up to breathtaking vistas. As we walked, we talked, really talked. She told me stories about her dad, some I'd heard before and others that were new to me. I shared updates about my own life, how I'd been filling my time, the things I'd been reflecting on. Somewhere along the trail, the conversation shifted to us. I confessed how I'd felt disconnected for so long, how I regretted not speaking up sooner. She admitted that she'd been scared, of aging, of change, of losing herself, and that retreating into her own space was her way of coping. I thought we were just comfortable, she said, echoing words from our past conversations. I didn't realize how much I was pushing you away. I should have told you how I was feeling, I admitted. I shouldn't have let it get so far without trying to fix it. She reached out and took my hand, a simple gesture, but it sent a jolt through me. Her hand fit perfectly in mine, just as it always had. Maybe we both made mistakes, she said softly, but maybe it's not too late. We reached the summit in the early afternoon. The view was spectacular, rolling hills stretching out as far as the eye could see, the sun casting a warm glow over the landscape. Lauren pulled out a small urn from her backpack. Dad would have loved this, she murmured. Yeah, he would have, I agreed. She opened the urn and gently scattered some of the ashes into the wind. We stood there in silence, watching as they danced away on the breeze. After a few moments, she turned to me. Thank you for being here. There's nowhere else I'd rather be, I replied. She smiled then, a genuine, heartfelt smile that reached her eyes. Josh, do you think... is there any chance for us to start over? I looked at her, really looked at her. I saw the woman I'd fallen in love with all those years ago, the one who laughed at my jokes and held my hand during scary movies, the one who made me feel like I was home no matter where we were. I'd like that, I said, my voice steady. I'd like to try. She squeezed my hand. Me too. In the weeks that followed, we took things slowly. We started meeting up for coffee, going for walks, talking on the phone late into the night. The kids were cautiously optimistic. Grace was ecstatic but tried to hide it behind a veneer of skepticism. Jack was more reserved but admitted he was happy to see us spending time together. One evening as we sat on a park bench watching the sunset, Lauren rested her head on my shoulder. You know, she said thoughtfully, maybe losing Dad was a wake-up call. Life's too short to hold on to regrets. I wrapped my arm around her. I think we both needed a wake-up call. She tilted her head up to look at me. I'm sorry for everything, for pushing you away, for not seeing how unhappy you were. I'm sorry too, I replied, for not speaking up, for giving up too easily. She smiled softly. Here's to new beginnings? To new beginnings, I agreed. We decided to go to couples therapy to work through our past issues and to build a stronger foundation moving forward. It wasn't always easy, old wounds have a way of resurfacing, but we were committed to making it work this time. One Saturday morning as we sat together on her porch sipping coffee, she reached over and intertwined her fingers with mine. Move back in with me, she said suddenly. I raised an eyebrow, a smile tugging at the corners of my mouth. Are you sure? She nodded, more than anything. Let's make our house a home again. I felt a warmth spread through me, a sense of rightness. I'd love that. So, here we are, giving our marriage a second chance. The separate bedrooms are gone. We've turned one into a shared office space, and the other into a guest room. We've started hosting family dinners again, filling the house with laughter and the smell of home-cooked meals. Grace and Jack come over often, and it feels like the family we once were, only better because we're all more appreciative now. We've rediscovered the joy of simply being together, cuddling on the couch during movie nights, cooking meals side by side, even tackling DIY projects around the house. The intimacy and connection I longed for are back, and I can tell Lauren feels it too. Life isn't perfect, and we know there will be challenges ahead, but we're facing them together this time. We've learned the hard way that communication is key, and we're committed to keeping those lines open. As I sit here writing this final update, Lauren is in the garden, tending to her flowers. I watch her through the window, a contented smile on my face. She glances up and catches my eye, waving me over. "Come help me with these roses," she calls. "On my way," I respond. And as I walk out to join her, I feel a profound sense of gratitude. For second chances, for unexpected reunions, and for the love that brought us back together. Happily ever after? Maybe. But definitely happier than we've been in a long, long time.